two times in 5 meetings that I've forgotten to do record. Thanks to Cameron Dial, we are set to go today. Welcome, guys, to our fifth, can you believe that? Our fifth installment of Coping with COVID. Today's guest is Dominique. Used to be Dominique Jessen. Graduated in 2014 from Oakridge. Dominique was a Building a Better World Scholarship winner and is on the board of directors for Building a Better World Scholarship. Dominique was in the marching band. Dominique was the drum major in the marching band. Dominique was involved in everything, and Dominique is still involved in everything. That's what she does. That's what she does. She went to Western Michigan University and majored in business administration, and also worked in the, I think, and she can tell you this, I'm not sure, but in the small business or nonprofit, the nonprofit sector. We'll talk today a lot about what a nonprofit is and how it works. And then she went to work. She works now for United Way. United Way is a fascinating organization that has been essential in these troubled times. And Dominique is a volunteer coordinator and works with people in Muskegon County, Oceana County, and Newaygo County. And it is my distinct pleasure and honor to welcome to today's segment of Coping with COVID, minus Delaney Lind, Dominique Jessen. Welcome, Dominique.
Hey, thanks for a little bit of my background. So I did graduate from Western with a BA, which is Bachelor's of Business Administration. But my focus was actually in entrepreneurship. So I worked with startup companies, primarily focusing on sustainability and recreational activities. And then my other focus, so I had a double major, was nonprofit administration. So working with grassroots nonprofits in the Kalamazoo area at the time.
You were such a doer at Oakridge. I mean, you were involved in everything. You were involved in everything at Oakridge, and you're involved in everything now. I think when you look back at your transition from high school to college, United Way is almost a perfect match, isn't it? I mean, because it is about, just jumping in with up to your elbows.
Yeah, so right after graduation, I moved directly to Western and stayed in campus dorms for my first year. And then my second year, I was admitted into the Lee's Honor College based on my grades during my first year at Western, and spent the next 2 years on campus apartments, and then moved off campus for my senior year. During my senior year, I got to do a lot of really cool things with my major in entrepreneurship. We were going across the state doing pitch competitions, which is where you develop business ideas and or products. So we were doing actually sustainable composting, and I was going across the state pitching those ideas and how that kind of works, and being able to bring that into a business form. And then I also was president of the Nonprofit Student Leaders Association on campus. And from there, we did a lot of efforts with grant writing, social media, different pieces of fundraising, and then volunteer coordination. My internship was actually through the Methodist Church. And what I did is I helped manage a soup kitchen for the homeless population in Kalamazoo.
Where
It was at First United Methodist.
Okay.
And the soup kitchen was called Yana, for You Are Not Alone. And we served about 300 people once a week for their dinner. And then I also worked for eviction prevention, where we helped citizens that were facing eviction and being able to help cover those costs and working through efforts with that. And then I did a very small, I can't talk about it too much, work with what's called Justice for Our Neighbors, which helped immigrants in Kalamazoo, primarily DACA students. During a pretty pivotal year, actually,
Yeah.
with the different administration that had gone through.
That's a lot of stuff. I mean,
It
your
was a lot.
senior year, you were buried. Your senior year, you were, I mean, when, students here, when I'm talking to you about her involvement at Oakridge, Dominique was involved in everything. She was
It
just
was.
always going, 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 going. And I mean, it didn't slow down at Western. The thing at Western is you have so many more options to go into. And then it's saying, you can do these, inside your major, or you can do these outside of your major. If you really bite the apple at college, you've got a lot of choices. I would assume then that you look back at Western and say, yeah, that was a pretty good education.
Absolutely. I loved my time at Western. I would love to talk to any student ever. I always offer that to Oakridge, um, and let their college advisor know. But uh, my experience at Western was not only life changing, but brought in a lot of opportunities now and prepared me for the real world that I wasn't expecting. You talk about me doing so much at Oakridge, and I did. I mean, I was a part of National Honor Society Student Council, sports, marching band, you name it, I was there. Um, when I went to Western, when I didn't have that, my first semester, I started crumbling. I didn't know what was going to happen. And just, when Bob, I don't know if he still does this about the whole thing where you're like in the fetal position and you're crying. You still do
Yeah,
that?
yeah, I
Yeah.
do that.
Okay. So that's legit, in my experience, because I wasn't involved in those things. So for me, when I got more involved on campus, those are actually what really saved and helped me through.
And
And I
that,
would
and
recommend that to anybody.
yeah, that, and everybody here, everybody that's watching here, you guys, each of you, when you go to college, when you're going to hit that fetal position, you're all juniors with a couple of exceptions. And you have been doing the same thing for a dozen years, same exact thing, year after year after year after year. I mean, actually, this pandemic has kind of shook it up a little bit. And when you leave that comfort zone and you walk out to wherever it is, you're discombobulated, and you end up on the ground in fetal position and wondering what I did with my life and why was I here and why am I here and what I'm going to do. What's interesting with yours, Dominique, is that to get out of it, you needed to get involved. You
I
needed
did.
to bury yourself in stuff like you were at the school. Everybody has their own reasons, but
Absolutely.
it took you a bit to get rewrited. But once you got rewrited and you went into the directions that you wanted, I think you found what you needed.
Absolutely. And you're absolutely right. My roommates that I had stayed with throughout college had a different approach. They didn't get involved as many things, and that worked for them. For me, the busier I was, the more I thrived in that way. And
Yeah.
that's why actually my job here at United Way fits really well. Um, like Mr. Woods said, what I do now is I coordinate thousands of volunteers across Muskegon County, which is primarily where I'm located. But I also do work in Oceana and Newaygo as well. And we really coordinate with about 76 different local programs across that region on finding volunteers and connecting them. And I also get to go out in the field quite a bit. And then after that, I also do communications at United Way for my office. So when I'm not doing volunteerism, I am doing communications work, whether that's marketing, press releases, social media, and those different things, which has been a huge boost with all the COVID-19 stuff going on. So we're constantly, I get probably about 30 press releases a day now from local organizations to make sure that we're updating the community on what's going on locally and being that central hub.
Okay, let's get real basic here. What is United Way?
Yeah, so United Way, what we do is we work and fund local programs at other agencies. So we help coordinate the fundraising and financial stabilities for some of these nonprofits. So an example is like one of
So
our
you are a
partners.
business, right? You're a
We
business,
are we are a nonprofit.
a nonprofit. Can you also, while you're explaining what United Way is, explain to everybody what a nonprofit is?
Yeah, so what a nonprofit is it runs just like a business. Think business, except whatever profit we get goes right back into the organization and for programming and funding. So, like a business, if they have, $100,000 thanks to sales, right? That can go into bonuses, or they hold it kind of off in an account for a while and they grow and do that kind of thing. What we do is we put all of that money back into local programming to be spent
By law,
um,
by
by
law,
law.
yeah,
By
by
law.
law, right. So a
Yes, absolutely.
nonprofit like Wesco, ENA, Subway, those are all for-profit businesses. They're making money. So they make money,
Hmm.
they have employees, they pay their employees, they do everything that they have to do within there. With a nonprofit, you can't at the end of the year have a profit. It has to go back into the business. And then because of that, you get tax breaks so that,
Yes.
and oftentimes, more often than not, nonprofits are doing good deeds in the community.
So yeah, so one of the misconceptions that I get a lot is that if I work for a nonprofit, then I don't get paid. I do. Nonprofits run just like a normal business. We pay our
Mhm.
expenses, we pay our light bill, we pay, our employees and what they're doing and what the work is for. It's just that everything goes back into like a program. So for an example, for United Way, when I say we work with 76 programs, we fund 76 programs at about 40 different agencies. So for an example, right now, the Salvation Army, we are funding a portion of their food pantries and running
Okay.
those. So some of those programs going to happen. For the Child Abuse Council, we pay for the CASA program, which is the court appointed our court appointed special advocate, right? So that's the person for those that have experienced child abuse to have a legal person able there to be able to speak on behalf of the child. So those are some of the different things that we go, and we have about 76 of those.
Please. Jagger Smith, you got a question?
Yes, I do. Has the COVID-19 pandemic changed how your job works at all? Has it changed how the foundation handles things now as a thing?
Absolutely. So COVID-19, for my job in particularly with volunteerism, has changed dramatically because a lot of the people I worked with were seniors. And we no longer are working with volunteer seniors for their safety, right? So we're making sure that I have volunteers that are 93 years old, that they were going to Kids Food Basket every day and working in the field. And right now, the idea is to keep them safe, and we want to make sure that we're putting them um, out of harm's way and making sure that they are safe at home and that we're keeping in touch with them and there. So it left a huge gap um, from our senior population on what can we do from the ages of 18 to 60. I also had a lot of youth volunteers from local high schools that now are trying to pivot and figure out what they can do at home. So that was a huge change for us as well. And one of the things that our local United Way did is, instead of doing and focusing on the 76 programs that we usually focus on all throughout the year, is we actually launched the COVID-19 Response Fund. And what the COVID-19 Response Fund is we've collected over $300,000 to give into grants for basic needs and necessities that help combat COVID. So we have quite a bit that has already been given out, and these grants are given out weekly, so that as nonprofits are using and spending, that those funds we're able to reallocate and keep putting in and feeding into the system. We've done a lot of food pantry work. We've done, one of my favorite ones is we've just granted the Latinos Working for a Better Future to be able to help translate COVID-19 materials for Spanish speaking individuals. The state association usually has Spanish materials, but what we've learned is a lot of our local nonprofits can't do that. So how can we make sure that that information is being displayed for everybody um, and available for everybody?
You guys are at the pulse of the community. You are with
Yep.
all of these different groups. I know that when this whole thing closed down and we were exited from Oakridge, the first thing I did was get on the phone and call you. And I said,
Hmm.
what can I do? I want to drive food to people. I want to do this. I want to do that. And you asked how old I
I knew.
was, and you said that I was too old to do it. And so I was the one that was going to be on the receiving end. and I wasn't able to volunteer for you guys. You guys are doing so much, especially during this time.
Mhm. Yeah, it's definitely been a lot to go through. And it's been really hard for me as well because I love working with all of the volunteers that I usually work with, and we've had to change how we do that. So now I'm not seeing everybody in person as much, or we are wearing masks and we are wearing that proper PPE, and we're doing shift changes and really limiting on the size of how many people can gather at once. And we had to do that very, very early on, which for our food pantries, a lot of our food pantries are shop style, meaning that families can come in and pick the food that they like. That way if somebody doesn't like beets, they're not getting beets in a box. And we had to figure out how do we redo that so that we're not having tons of people coming through the door that could potentially be sick and be in an at-risk population.
So what did you
Um,
do?
so a lot of our food pantries that we coordinate have changed to box style. So it's kind of a pickup drop off. So they set up an appointment. Volunteers actually come in the day of and pack all the boxes beforehand. And as they pull up, we have volunteers that bring it out to their car. Age Well Services, which usually does Meals on Wheels for seniors. I'm sure a lot of you guys, if you're on social media, have seen the senior curbside pickup, right? And it's lines and lines of cars that kind of go through drive-through style, and we're getting in these boxes instead of doing the home-to-home deliveries. For our at most risk seniors that physically can't leave the home and have no mode of transportation and have no family, we've actually created a program around this, which took a lot of time and effort and coordination, but we have actually figured out how to get those deliveries to these seniors or those that can afford groceries and they can't go to the store. And how can we incorporate volunteers into being able to call these seniors, get their grocery lists, go shopping, get what they need, and be able to deliver that.
Could
Um,
could these guys, could 17-year-olds volunteer with United Way during COVID, or is that or not?
If you are 17, you are able to volunteer after a lot, and I mean a lot, of parent permission slips are filled out, and then I would have a conversation with your parents over the phone as well. We really want to make sure that all families are comfortable in volunteering and treat this very cautiously.
Good.
I have a
Questions?
question. Oh, I have a question. I'm sorry. So would you say that there is more of a need for volunteers now because of all the extra stuff that you're doing, or would you say that there's less because there's not as much going on?
So yes and no. So in the beginning, when everything got cut and everybody was sent home and we were trying to figure out what programs were even open at the time and how we were kind of adjusting, similar to how Oakridge has figured out how to do the student meals, right? So there was some time lapse in there where we all had to figure out what do we do now. Um, right off the get-go, I'm very proud of the Muskegon community because I had a surplus of 200 new volunteers that had never volunteered with us before sign up and ready to go. I mean, they were ready to be able to help in that community and capacity way. We are now experiencing kind of a downward turn now that things are starting to open back up. People are going back to work, or maybe, although the media is very still on top of what's going on with COVID-19, there's more of a relaxed feel that's kind of coming off in the public about what's going on. So we are starting to lose our volunteers a little bit. Um, and that is going to be a concern for us as more people are returning back to work, but we still have almost double of the population need for these programs and services.
You have Jaker Smith has another question.
Yes. So I was just wondering, what are your guys' long-term plans? I guess if you have any, how are you because of this whole thing, and they say we could have another sort of episode in the fall and everything. Are you planning on, or how are you planning on dealing with that or adapting to this new way of life, I guess, and just making sure that people get these things that they
That's a really great question. A lot of it is still being figured out as we go. Some of the stuff that's happening is there's a lot of, every time we get closer to a government order, right? There's another one in place.
Yep.
And at the very beginning, it would seem like there was 4 or 5 of them all on the same day. So once we get a plan in place, it always seems like it seems to change. That we have an idea of this is going to open and this is what we're going to do. So that's something that we're definitely looking more towards. We are looking to go more virtual. So for United Way, we were a large meeting place. That's one thing that nobody ever tells you guys in college or in school, that your life is just going to be meetings. If you're in the professional world, it's insane. Like nobody talks about that. You just go to meeting, and then you have meetings about the meetings. It's true. So we are looking to go more virtual. Zoom has definitely been a blessing for us, and as clearly for you guys too with school. Um, so trying to figure out what can we do less in person, and then how can we better create that experience for people as well if we're not going to have that in-person event or time.
Does it, you mentioned that things are relaxing a bit. Does that worry you in regards not just to volunteering, but does it worry you about where this virus is going? I mean, when you see people flocking to the Lakeshore, how do you feel about that?
So I do want to put now, because I know you're recording, that this is my personal. It's no reflection to my job.
Okay.
On this. So I do worry. Because I work with such at-risk populations, I'm staring at those that are ill in the face every day. Okay, so I'm seeing the homeless population that's getting tested for COVID-19 and working with them, because one of the things that we know is if a homeless person gets tested for COVID-19 and they have no place to go, they're going to go back to the shelter. And if they go back to the shelter, they have risk now infecting everybody that's in that shelter. So we've been able to set it in plans in place of what happens for those individuals. We're working with them. We're working for the senior population that I get phone calls now that haven't had groceries in a few weeks and are terrified of getting to the store. I'm working with those with mental health issues, that same thing that we've had a report of a woman who is so fearful and has such anxiety that she has duct taped her windows and her doors and everything around her. So to have everything open up, I know for those that, and I struggle too with myself on where do I fall with these rules, right? Because sometimes I'm like, like this is so frustrating. And other times I'm staring these people right in the eye, and as we're serving them and working with them, those people that are now on unemployment, that are used to being at work and now struggling through the unemployment system, that now have to try to figure out how do you go to a pantry or how do you get these assistances. These are the people that I work every day. So to see people flocking, it gets really kind of frustrating as well, because it's like, man, if this blows up more, we're prolonging that situation and these people are going to be stuck in this cycle. But at the same time, even myself, I was super, in my house at all times. And now I'm going to the grocery store more often. I do wear the proper PPE, but being able to check out those things and kind of working with that. So it's kind of this hard internal struggle myself.
Can you explain to everybody why you had to say to us first, this is my belief, this is not United Way's belief? And secondly, can you clarify exactly what you mean by an at-risk population?
Yeah, so I would suggest this for anybody in the professional world, or even in college, right? If you're representing an organization or a club. When it comes to highly political conversations, and make sure that you're always putting that on your own. That protects you from your workforce. It protects you from having some of that liabilities in. I can tell you for United Way, we work really closely with the CDC. We work very closely with public health. We don't have an official statement on our stance, but we do help, we do help coordinate the Mask Up Muskegon efforts that are going on, and those different things. So we do have a strong hold on making sure that people are safe. However, we don't have a position on the beaches or things opening up.
Okay.
So that's kind of why that is, because we don't have an official statement for that. I wanted to make sure that it was clear that that was my statement, not for United Way.
Thank you for clarifying that.
No problem.
In the at-risk, what is an at-risk population?
So an at-risk population is anyone who might be immunocompromised. They could be socioeconomic on the poverty level, where they might not be able to afford a doctor's appointment, or if something goes wrong, they won't be able to pick up, or those that are elderly, who, again, it has to do a lot with that that health recovery. Do they have the means to be able to be healthy, whether that's physically or financially?
Thank you. Jagger.
You mentioned a lot of challenges that you've had to deal with because of this whole thing. I was just wondering, like, what is like the hardest or most difficult thing that you've had to deal with out of all of them?
Yeah, so I guess I'll have two for that. So one of the hardest things that we had to figure out was this grocery delivery for seniors. There was a lot of what ifs and a lot of loopholes, and then how do we pay, and kind of working with that. Meanwhile, we're getting calls every day, like, is the program ready yet? We have people at their door. Like, we have people that are ready to go. What are we doing? So that, and I would say that for any nonprofit that's going through this change and trying to figure it out, is while you're trying to figure out and plan, you want to make sure that everything is set so that nothing goes wrong. But while you're doing that, there are still people out there that need help, right? So you're trying to move as quickly as you can to ensure that they're safe and that those safety precautions are going on, but you're also trying to work under the clock because you want to make sure that those people are meeting their needs. The other one is actually a story I started telling Mr. Wood yesterday.
Oh, this is good. Are you talking about Muskegon Heights and the?
Yeah.
Oh,
So
excellent. Okay.
So one of the things that happened is, I don't know how many of you guys heard about the free testing that happened over Memorial Weekend in Muskegon Heights. So picture this, like, I'm sitting in this office. I am the only one back at my office. So I'm sitting in this office. It's the Friday before Memorial Day. I'm getting ready to leave. And I get a call at 1 p.m. And it is my boss and a colonel from the National Guard. All right. And they're calling me to let me know that they have decided that they're going to have free testing, no doctor slips needed, no symptoms even needed for any individual in Muskegon Heights over the weekend. And I'm like, oh, that's awesome. Like, how have I not heard about this? You're going to want me to, push out this information. And they go, yeah, it starts tomorrow at 8 a.m. And I was like, oh, that's great. And they're like, we need volunteers. And I kind of stopped a little bit. I'm like, okay, you need some volunteers. They're like, yeah, we're going to need a lot of volunteers. And what it was is that they needed help. The National Guard did the testing and all of the medical stuff and handled those pieces, but they needed volunteers to help direct traffic and answer questions as things were going through, to make sure that the National Guard could safely operate while they were completely sanitized. They can't touch a lot of things. And making sure that there was going to be no hiccups there. And I'm like, okay, because now I'm like, okay, it's a holiday weekend. It's 1 p.m. You're talking about an 8 a.m. call time. They're going to have to get there at 7:30 in the morning. I'm like, well, how many are you talking about? At first, the number was 72. They were going to need 72 volunteers in less than 24 hours. After multiple phone calls, and we were going back and forth, and dates kept changing, and different little pieces of these things kept changing, it finally got to, at about 4 p.m. on Friday, mind you, when tomorrow we're supposed to start, that they needed 48 volunteers to serve in 4 different shifts, so 12 people on each shift. So hurry up, get on that, let's go. Right? So what do you do when the National Guard calls your phone and it's a holiday evening and people are already headed up to wherever they're going? I don't even know where people went, but they were gone. And how are you going to connect that and look at volunteers and say, hey, I know it's a holiday evening. I know this is super last minute, because nobody likes a last minute call. And by the way, I'm going to have you work with a population that could or could not have coronavirus. I don't know. So what do you do with that situation? So that was a huge obstacle for us to be able to cover. But I got to give it up to my team and the amazing people in Muskegon for stepping up to that challenge, because I don't know how the heck we did it, but we pulled it off, and we had more than enough volunteers that came in, and we tested over 1,000 people on
great.
Memorial Weekend.
Well done. This has been an ongoing problem in the United States, and so we talked to Zhao Wei last week, and they were, and in China, they were just, they were testing. I mean, they were chasing people and testing. They had them on phones and they were testing. They were everywhere. The United States, we sat for the whole month of February. We didn't even raise the virus. We didn't raise the pandemic to a level that it needed to be raised to. In the states then have been reluctant to offer all of this free testing. They are now, just this weekend, I think that your National Guard thing kicked it off. And then I read online that there was free tests. The governor has now provided free tests for anybody, regardless of reason. They can drive up and have a test, but this all costs a lot of money. These tests cost a lot of money to be read, plus to have all of the equipment. And I don't know if the state feels as though it has had the budget to do that kind of testing, but now they're going to do that testing. And so I think that Dominique's deal with with Muskegon Heights was an example of things to come. Actually, what are we? We're at the end of May. Actually, things that should have been happening in February. Things that should have been happening in February are happening now. Wouldn't you say? Is that a fair assumption, Dominique?
I would say that the testing should have started earlier, but we were at a lack of proper equipment and the
Right.
lack of testing. If we would have had it here in Muskegon, we would have started testing a lot earlier.
Yeah, someone have a question.
Yeah. This is Javier. Has this pandemic personally affected you and your family?
It has definitely affected my family. My sister lives actually in Kalamazoo and is very ill right now. And at the time, she was actually working at the meat plant that had about 76 positive cases. And she lives quite far away, and we had no way to travel to make sure that she's there. And right now, they're really not letting people into the hospitals. And it's a lot of teledoc calls. So there's a lot of stress there. I also have a personal friend that he comes to Thanksgiving with us every year, who was also tested positive for coronavirus last month. So it has definitely been around. And then other than those two situations, the only other personal thing is that my life has kind of come off the rails a little bit on structure. Just because of the nature of my job. And I'm not complaining about that at all. It's just the facts that I do get calls at all hours of the night, and I have to be ready to answer those calls and be ready to start solving problems.
Thank you.
Question.
This is Cameron.
Yeah, go ahead,
I was
Cameron.
wondering, do you have a lot of people at United Way been laid off? Like, do you know any of your friends or anyone in your family?
So for United Way, we have had no layoffs. We are all working from home as much as possible. So for my local office, I should say, so that's one clarification too, is United Way. We have a lot of sister offices. You can kind of think it as like a franchise almost, right? So what I do at United Way of the Lakeshore is different than what happens at like United Way of Greater Ottawa. Our local office, though, we have not had any layoffs. As for family, my sister-in-law, my brother-in-law, and my husband at one point were all on layoff. My husband is back to work. He was lucky enough to be, or I don't know if you even want to call it lucky, but he was called into work about a month earlier than the rest of his shop. So he has been able to work all but about 3 weeks.
Throughout this whole thing, you've been talking about how you are getting this person into a position where they can be successful. You're getting this person into a position where they can be successful. This person and this person and this person. You and this job go like a hand in a glove. I almost see you being the drum major with the band, being a drum major with the United Way.
I absolutely love my job. I couldn't have asked for anything better. Especially coming right out of college. A lot of my friends that I graduated are still not employed in the field that which they got their degree. So I was extremely, extremely lucky to be able to um, end up on this job, and I've really been able to make it my own. My coworkers and my boss are super flexible in letting me make this my own and let me just kind of run. They trust me on what I know and has been able to build. So I've been able to really grow over the last 2 years on what's been going on.
You are so right about this.
Mhm.
When kids come out of college, you go away to college, you get a degree, and you're on the sidelines. You are on the sidelines and you're moving jobs. And it may be, I don't know, sometimes it's 6, 7, 8 years
Mhm.
before you land in a place that feels comfortable for you to be. Well, how old are you?
I am 23.
You're 23 years old and you're sitting in a job that I would expect somebody to be 35 in. And so to be at that position, to have that kind of authority and that kind of a responsibility, it's good for United Way, obviously, but it's also so good for you. I mean, we always talk to when you talk to young people, you say, okay, where do you see yourself in 10 years? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? I mean, when you reach in you're at 23 at a job that is so significant, particularly at a time like this, I don't know. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Here in this job? I mean, you just seem so fit for this job.
That's something that I've actually been struggling with. So before COVID-19 hit, I was actually in the middle of applying for grad school. And at this point, I really don't know. I'm putting grad school off for a little while um, until I can kind of figure out what's going to happen and then go from there. But I'm exactly where I wanted to be in high school. And so moving upwards from here, maybe in a 5, 10 years, being an executive director, but this is my bread and butter, and I was extremely lucky. I have a lot of friends, like I said, that I graduated with that are way smarter than I am. And I have the confidence that I can admit that are sitting on the sidelines right now.
Yeah.
Um, and they're completely qualified and ready to go. It's just not available. One of the things I wanted to mention too, and it got kind of touched on earlier, but one of the things I know Mr. Wood talks about a lot is global awareness, right? So the Building a Better World scholarship, it even has that global awareness piece on that. And I had a shocking memory actually back from in February when I was preparing on what I was going to say to you guys and what I was thinking about earlier this week. And I realized that I was not being global aware, and I actually probably could have prepared myself a little bit more for what was going to happen to not that I would have been able to predict what has happened, but at least being better prepared for myself. So one of the things I wanted to touch on was when you are working or when you are going around the world, look for those little signs. One of the things that I do normally when there's not a pandemic outbreak is I actually work with companies on being able to set up volunteer teams so that if you work at Herman Miller, which is my husband's company, and they want to do a engagement project or something for the community, I actually help them plan those and work with those. And I had a chemical company in Texas that has a plant here in Montague, and they wanted to do something good for the community come June. And this is back in February, so we're talking months spacing here. Um, and they wanted to come and do something, and they were really looking at buying STEM kits to work with local students and being able to kind of mentor students at the end of the year and do kind of like a really cool science day. So that week I had sent them an idea list. I had about 8 different projects proposed, one of them being those STEM kits. Some of them were packing food and different things, and sent it back to them and like, hey, talk to your team. This is about, like here's 8 ideas of something that we can do and what that would look like. And they had came back and they said, hey, we really like this idea of the STEM kits. I see you had the pricing there because I had looked up the price of what the STEM kits would be and everything like that. They're like, can you tell us just a little bit more about those? Can you send us like the link or the picture or what that would look like? And so we can kind of finalize that project. So within 1 week, I had actually looked at my manufacturer that I work with to get these STEM kits. And I had put them in the cart, like pretended that I was purchasing them at the time. And I had noticed that shipping said like $3,000 and that I wasn't going to get these STEM kits until June. And I'm like, what in the world is going on here? Like, I had no idea. And I was like, this has to be a
Oh.
mistake. Something has to be happening. Like, I don't know what's going on. So I'm like, click and refresh, and I'm trying to find out. And what it was is at the top of the screen in a little yellow banner on the manufacturing site, it said delays are down and shipping is higher. I don't remember exactly the exact verbiage, but it said due to COVID-19. And I'm like, what is this thing? Like, this is stupid. You know, I'm like $3,000. Like, what is going on? So I kind of looked it up, and I seen a couple of the first news releases about what's going on. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm like, something really big's going on there. I'm like, who would have thought that the issue in China right now is affecting my job? You know, so I had to write an email back, and it was almost in a joking manner, and I feel almost ashamed of that at this point. But you know, of like, I did not foresee that coming. Like, I'm sorry, we're not going to be able to get these STEM kits or anything that's happening. You know, who would have thought? And I had forgotten about that moment up until Monday, um, when I was preparing on what I was thinking that was going to happen out of this call. So I just wanted to tell you guys about that, you know, that global awareness piece. If I would have paid more attention myself, not that I could have stopped the pandemic or anything like that, that's ridiculous. Like, I couldn't have done that, but I could have better prepared myself and my work on what might be able to come. So if you're able to do that, look for those flags and being able to know what's going on in the world around you, because I might have been able to stock up more on PPE for my volunteers earlier. I might have been able to, you know, stock up myself personally on some of those goods and being able to see those when I realized that I wasn't going to be able to get STEM kits.
That is fascinating. What date was it when you noticed that originally?
That would have been about the middle of February.
Wow. Wow. Ty, you got a question?
Has it been harder to find volunteers since the coronavirus?
Believe it or not, no. I am actually, that's something that I thought was going to be a huge problem, because like I said earlier, we have missed our seniors dearly. Seniors actually make up probably about 70% of the volunteer workforce statewide, honestly, just because they're retired. And I was really worried about that. But when everything shut down and everyone was sent home, I was overwhelmed by how many people were calling and like, I can't work, I can't go to school, what can I do? And I want to help these people. So volunteer recruiting has been a blessing, and it's been actually incredibly easy for us to do that. Now, like I said earlier, we are seeing kind of a downturn in that spike, but still hoping for the best.
This is really interesting. I did not realize, I knew you were involved, but I didn't realize you were so involved. And that United Way was, it's almost like you're an octopus. You guys got your arms all over out there on this thing.
A little bit, and that's just the
Go
tip
ahead.
of the iceberg.
Jagger, another question. Great.
Yeah. You've pretty much throughout the video, like, I guess, described it, but what has been like the real like economic impact on the place you work and your life?
I'm going to actually speak to the nonprofit sector as a whole for this one. Personally, I haven't been affected as much. My husband was able to start working, and I've been working this entire time. But for the nonprofit sector as a whole, we rely heavily on public donations, special events, and festivals. So as festivals are closing or as our events are no longer able to happen, that is revenue that we have been almost focusing on and guaranteeing for dozens and dozens of years. You have some of these festivals that are 100 years old, right? Like, those are things that we expect and kind of build into our budget, that this is going to help make these things work. So without that, a lot of our nonprofits are now scrambling, and we are worried about how do we make that up, and how are we going to make that possible? Do we do a virtual event? Do we postpone? What can we do to make sure that we ensure that? One of the things that has been amazing to work with, and it shows the collaboration of the county that we live in, is United Way has been partnering a lot with the Community Foundation. But then what happens to our nonprofits that aren't doing COVID? but they're still really great programs, and they're still needed, like Big Brothers Big Sisters, like the Boys and Girls Club. Like, what about those guys? And what they have actually done is they've set for a match day on June 3rd, where all donations are going to be matched up to $100,000, and be able to distribute out to nonprofits. So that is good, but it's still just a scratch on the surface of what a lot of us will be kind of recovering from. You might see a lot of cuts in programming soon, and it's terrible to think, especially in a time where these programs are going to be needed most.
Do you have anything else to add?
Yeah, if anybody is interested in going to Western, you can always give me a call or email me. Mr. Wood's got all my contact information, and Bob, you can give that to anybody. I'd love to talk about Western anytime. If you have questions about volunteering or how to get involved, I'm your go-to. I like to work on local levels. I've been working with Oakridge already with the, the Rotaract group on starting some reading programs over there. And I do a lot of community cleanups. So if you have something that you really want to do in your community and lead the charge, I'm there to support. That's some of the favorite things that I do. And really, if you have any questions about nonprofits or business, my other background is business and marketing communications. So I'm just here, and I like to just let people know, because I didn't have that as much.
You think about timing in life. Life is timing. Everything. It's all timing. It's where you're at a particular time when it comes. This COVID-19, it reaches out. It has to have organizations like United Way. Organizations like United Way have to have people like you. And then you have to be able to inspire volunteers to come out and to do the work that you need to do. I mean, when you look at it, it's easy to be pessimistic about things. But when I talk to you, when I listen to you, and listen to all that's going on, I don't know. I feel more optimistic. I feel more optimistic. This is human beings helping human beings.
Absolutely. My job wouldn't be successful if it wasn't for the actual caring individuals that live in the community. And I know that it can be so hard to see those individuals, especially with media right now. But do know and help highlight those that are doing the work and getting out there. You know, we talked about the seniors. There are some things that they're doing at home. And I have this one woman, she's 70, and she has made me over 200 masks, right, to be able to give out into the population. I mean, there are people out there that are doing the work and that care. And my job would not be successful if it wasn't for those people. Perfect.
Perfecto. And on that note, our last Coping with COVID, guys, next week, Wednesday at 3:00, we're going to talk with Kelly Wiersma. She is a doctor down at Spectrum Health in Grand Rapids, graduate of 1996. And she is an OBGYN in Grand Rapids. And she also, along with her husband, owns a boxing club. And that boxing club has really struggled because they can't get open. And she will have a lot to say about the boxing club, I'm sure, in addition to the hospital. Thanks, Dominique.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks a lot. Thank you so much. Keep on rocking, baby. You're doing good. You keep on doing what you're doing. And you all have a great weekend. Enjoy the sunshine. Get outside. And hey, if you feel like you in your soul want to volunteer and get involved and help people, here's your gal. This is the person right here to contact. And I think that you would find it so rewarding and so many opportunities to do good in a time that needs people to do good. So thank you, Dominique Bunker, for a wonderful hour. We really appreciate it.
Thank you again.
So long, everybody.
Mr. Wood.
See you guys. Have a good weekend.
Bye, Mr. Wood.
Bye-bye, guys.
That was good.
That was great.
I feel good.
That was great, baby. You did wonderful. You did wonderful. Wow. I did not know that you are doing so many freaking things.
I am. It's
Holy
awful.
cow. Oh my God. My God. Oh man, good for United Way.